Conscious Kitchen family. Welcome to a special bonus episode of season 4 of the Conscious Kitchen podcast. We're dissecting and having a full circle moment today with the opportunity to chat with my longtime friend and creative sister, Kat Graham. Kat and I have met through Hollywood's emerging creative and fashion scene in the Dim Mak Steve Aoki collective almost 13 years ago. She was a supportive force in my corner when I was in infancy of creating my clothing brand Dime Piece. Kat even modeled for us when blogging was cool, guys. She has always been willing to collaborate and try something new, and she was the actress, dancer, and it girl at every red carpet, dressing uniquely different, mixing streetwear with indie designers, hard-to-find statement pieces, and pop culture motifs at every magazine event and Hollywood networking event. I love showing her my handmade items like skirts or tops I made myself. She wore them proudly and always supported me, and therefore inspired others to come out of their own typical mundane fashion. Kat created the term multi-hyphenate before the term even became popular. She's a multicultural, drop-dead gorgeous creative who shapeshifted and legitimately climbed the Hollywood ladder, paving the way for other colored creatives. She most recently stars as the lead in Netflix's 2020 holiday hit film Operation Christmas Drop, and previously starred as the female lead in RZA's Cutthroat City, starring Ethan Hawke, Wesley Snipes, and Terrence Howard. Not only has she been in a ton of shows on Netflix and television, she is also a UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador. Just released her newest single on Spotify as well, called Swim, with her new alias Toro Gato, and has built a supportive community of over 7 million followers on Instagram. Kat is one of the most accomplished and versatile young talents working today. Yes, guys, she does not stop. What we love about Kat is her ever-evolving drive, passion for helping others, and humility to be viciously herself. We haven't spoken in years, but we're welcoming Kat Graham, Toro Gato, to the show. Welcome, babe!
Thank you, Laura. That was awesome. I'm so excited to be here. I love the fact that, like you said, we haven't really talked in years, but, we've stayed connected. And I think that's super important. You were there way before I was even near fame. And I was thinking when I was driving this morning, I was like, I wonder if Laura knew how broke I was. Like, I wonder if I think she knew, but I don't think she really knew, because I was like looking at how I would put together some of like the looks that you would give me. And I was like, oh my God, my hair is terrible. My makeup's terrible, but my outfit was pretty cute. So, I just wonder and you had also introduced me to Cottrell, who I then became engaged to. We're still friends, by the way. We're not obviously
awesome.
married. That didn't work out, but we're still good friends. He's awesome.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, I love how you're like, oh, if you knew how broke I was. Starting Dime Piece, I was always like negative $200 in my bank account for like the first 5 years, So, I mean, I would just drive my ass out to LA and Hollywood with a negative bank account, and we just still made it happen,
We were scrappy, Laura. We were some scrappy kids running around in this, it was the Steve Aoki, Dim Mak, Joy Rich, DJ Skeet circle.
Yes. It's pretty amazing to see how much people have changed culture. Like those people 10 years ago, and now they're like in the forefront, including you, of like how culture and the scene changed. And like you guys we created that like door,
Yeah, there was definitely, I remember it was Jeremy Scott's throwing a party and maybe Cottrell can sneak us in, you know what I mean? Because I was underage, So it was it's so much cool stuff back then that we would get into, and running around and being on carpets I had no business being on, just hustling myself into events. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it here in LA. Just make it in there. Find your way in.
Fake it till you make it. That's a real thing.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, in my mind, I was not faking it. I was like, well, I'm here and I'm me, and the world hasn't caught up yet. And that was always my attitude,
Yes, hell yeah. That's how. Yeah, you got to be that way for sure. Your own biggest supporter.
Yeah, we were running around with Carly Enriquez, who's still a good friend of mine, and it's nice that we've all kind of stayed connected, and you're now in Madrid, which is wild.
Yeah, I left like 3 years ago. I wrapped up my brand, and I didn't completely wrap it up, but I pretty much made the move. I was long distance with my fiance now for 2 years. I was long distance, and then I just made it happen. I was like, you know what? I never lived abroad. I don't have kids. I don't have crazy responsibilities. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But so how are you feeling today? What's going on? What's on your mind? How are you feeling? How's it been for you these past few months?
I'm good. I'm gearing up to travel to Greece on Monday. I'm going with I'm producing a doc with Time Studios and my partner Darren, who I was telling you about, and we're going to be following refugees on their journey in Greece. And then it's part of like a larger series called The Tipping Point, which is Trevor Noah's documentary series that he's doing. So this is one of the films that's a part of that. And then right after that, I start shooting a film in LA in mid-December. So it's kind of a bit back to back. So mentally right now, I'm trying to be in the holiday spirit. But gearing up to do 2 films back to back is a little unnerving. So just processing it all.
Wow. Yeah, that's so special. And I was just looking at the news today about the Pope is going over there to Greece now for the refugees, and I was watching people like prepare food for the camps there and everything. So it's really interesting living abroad because I see so much different types of news that you usually don't see in America. I think they're less filtered here in Europe. But speaking of your creative process, we'd love to know more about like, how do you mentally prepare or not prepare? You've had so many different roles and so many different projects. Like, is there anything specific that you think is special to you about your creative process?
It just really depends, I think, on the project. I mean, I had been working on the new record, which is Toro Gato. The full album is dropping in January. Released a few songs as a partial part of this collection, and I don't know sometimes what will happen with it. I kind of just immediately create when I think of something, which definitely isn't my my bank manager's favorite thing that I do, but I just do it, and then I worry about where it's going to land later. So Toro Gato, I started 5 years ago, didn't have the right platform to release it because I didn't want to release it where it was just on streaming and it was just available everywhere. I wanted people that actually wanted the record to treat it like arts, which is why I released it as an NFT. So it depends. Like sometimes I'll look at kind of where I'm at in my life or what's happening culturally. And I'll say, okay, I need to do a film about something that's not getting a lot of attention. Like the next film I'm doing after Witness is called Collide. And for that project, that focuses on apartheid and victims of apartheid in South Africa. So that's something that I felt that there's a lot of people and a lot of my audience that is not necessarily aware of the history of that and how that's affected so many people. So same thing with Cutthroat City. Nobody knew what was happening in the Ninth Ward and how the Ninth Ward got so severely neglected by FEMA, and how they needed to still to this day have access to electricity and running water. So there are certain things that I do that I try and still be a humanitarian and say how I can be of service, but I still want to do it where I can be an artist and I can help evolve, my career in that way,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when you're tapping into, so right now you're also working on like the doc as well, which is going to probably hit such a different part of your creativity and just your process working with refugees and things like that. Is there a time where I don't know, how do you kind of shift from something that can be emotional to kind of working on your other projects?
I think everything is emotional. Like there is no different part of me with everything. It's just like, it's all emotional. And the way I work as an actor is the same way. I find the thing within the character that I'm deeply connected to. And that's just what it is. I think it's just different shades, right? It's hard because I feel like with doing so much, I've had to shift gears because I did finish this Netflix project, Love in the Villa, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's a romantic comedy with Tom Hopper. And it's like, it's a totally different energy than what I'm about to go into. But there is still that vulnerability and that emotion and that kind of, that dreamer, the person that I feel like Laura knows probably better than a lot of people that will ever meet me. There's always been that dreamer that that just believed that I was superior than my circumstances, that if I just stayed focused or stayed with this almost pie in the sky dream that my life would be better, that it would happen. And that's a quality that I try and bring into all of the characters is that hope that my circumstances would be better. Now they're much better than they were.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And that optimism, have you always had that just sense of optimism, or was there a moment or a person?
I actually don't know, Laura. You tell me how I was back then. If I always had that optimism, I don't know. It got rough.
I think you were just always, you had this crazy drive. And were you like that as a kid?
I think so.
Yeah.
I was like in grade school, just writing my Oscar speech. I was just like,
I love that.
super strange kid, like super strange. We were really strange, Laura. Like looking back, like we were strange, like weird. We were the weirdos, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh heck yeah. We were like, and we were like these like
artists,
cute little like brown artists, like
running around
it's like
LA. Yeah.
Just trying to prove our worth,
Yeah.
And it's crazy looking back on that. Yeah.
How did you guys meet anyway? Like what's like the recap version of where did you guys meet?
I think as I mentioned in the intro, we met like through Dim Mak.
Oh god,
and
just out.
I think a friend introduced us, Mike, who was working with us when we first started Dying Peace a long time ago. And then introduced us to Kat, and Kat was working with or shooting with Dim Mak. And then we asked Kat, I think, to shoot with us to do like a blog. And she was like modeling our clothes when we had our first like t-shirt collection.
So cute.
And then we just completely always just supported each other, like running around to events, like just trying to keep up with Hollywood's creative flow. It was crazy back then. It was just like so fun. And we didn't like care. We were just like, we were just kids like having fun with no
with no money and just no responsibilities and no money and hustling, just like this brown girl's hustling.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder that it's like you don't need all this money in the bank. It's like you can make things happen, and you can just
well, you have to.
Yeah, you have to. Exactly. So true.
You can't wait till you have money in the bank to go after your dreams. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even if it looks bad and it's scrappy and it makes like, it's just, you gotta at least try.
Yeah. It's crazy how, so much has changed. So I wanted to ask you from where you started and where you are now, like, what was the biggest lesson you learned about like just fighting for recognition, like in a crazy rigid industry like Hollywood? Like what was the moment when you felt like you made it?
Oh, I don't think I've made it. That I don't think. No.
You're so accomplished, though.
Yeah, no. I haven't scratched the surface.
Wow.
No,
I love that.
This is nowhere near what I'm going to be. But I would say, the one thing that I have learned, and Laura, I've known you for over a decade. And I think that I had tried so hard to just put myself out there because I wanted everyone to see my worth and look how talented I am and look how fashionable I am and look how creative I am and, you know, all of these things. And once I actually had done this work and had been so trained and I felt like I had mastered my craft, and became more spiritual, actually, changed the way that I navigated through my own life and my relationships and became super spiritual, the need for validation went away. So the thing that changed is back in the day, I would run to every event and want to meet everyone. And I don't do that anymore. I am much more decisive and I don't even like to use the word picky. It's just what I'm much more clear about who and what I'm choosing to align myself with. And I know my worth and I never look outside of myself for it ever these days. So that's been the biggest change, which comes from a lot of therapy, prayer, meditation, a lot of work, a lot of work to get there. Cause I had a tough parents who didn't always help me get to that place. So it took a lot of self-searching to realize that I don't need to look outside of myself for validation and just to keep going about my own rhythm, and the right things will fall into place as long as I do things from the right place in my heart. So that's been the biggest thing that I learned, is to stop looking outside.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy being part of that, the external validation of Hollywood, I mean, if you're not from there or live there in the past 10 years, or just even like took the risk to live there, coming from like a small town, like you feel the energy. And then it's crazy coming out of that and then going into like finding home and going so deeply introspective with the culture, like in general, like the awakening of the human spirit, right? Mm-hmm. Like doing therapy, trying different types of medicinal spiritual drugs, like all these types of things we use to heal ourselves. It's like, it's crazy. So it's really beautiful that you went through that.
Yeah.
I think we all have been doing the same thing as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I finished Vampire Diaries, which was the show that brought me to Georgia, I forgot what we were doing. I think, oh my God, I was shooting this boyfriend's back video that you were in, that I dragged you in. Remember that music video?
Yes.
So
yes.
Earlier that day, I had tested for Vampire Diaries. Do you remember that?
Wow.
I think so, yeah.
I had come straight from that audition to shoot this video with you. And then we shot the pilot in Vancouver, and then we shot the show when it got picked up in Atlanta, and everyone was like, and even me included, I would run back to LA to see Cottrell, whatever. And I would be back and forth, still hustling, trying to get my music off the ground, trying to get this project off the ground, still hustling, even though I was on a show and had limited time, less than I'd ever had in my life. When the show ended, basically everyone moved back to LA. But at that point, I had a feeling not to, and I didn't. And I stayed back here in Georgia. And it had a lot to do with every time I'd go back to Los Angeles, I didn't like the way I was treated. Like I was a scrappy kid with no money, and I was always treated that way in Los Angeles. And it was always a hustle for me to get in anywhere. And now all of a sudden I was this celebrity that everyone was like, I know her, and please come. And it was like so fake. And I'm like, you weren't riding with me from the beginning. Like you wouldn't even return emails. And now all of a sudden I'm, so I didn't like being around that energy, because I had grown up in LA, and I'd rather be treated like how I'd always been treated than this noticeably different experience. So I chose to just like move out into the country in Georgia and do that. And that came a lot of the spirituality and the worth and the laser thinking about how I wanted to and who I wanted to be, more importantly, not what jobs I want to do, what movies I want to do, what designers I want to wear. Like, no, no, it has to be around your purpose, right?
It give you that space.
Yeah,
It really
my
gave
purpose.
Give you that
Absolutely,
space.
because LA can distract you and make you think things are super relevant and you need to do it now. And it's nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, Hollywood is just, the competition there and the narcissism there is just so, it's so brutal.
Well, they teach you that you have
tough
competition
skin.
and they train you, and mentally, you know, people around you in Los Angeles will make you think you have so much competition and you need to do this and you need to do that. And that was why I behaved so differently than how I behave now, is also my environment. You know, I don't think I personally have competition. And that's not coming from a place of ego. That's like, I don't know anyone that can do what I can do. To the level that I can do it, or the level that I've done it, you know, in these things. I just don't know in terms of like the you know, accumulation of the things that I've done in my career. If there is another me, I'd love to meet them, but I haven't, you know. So when I get told, well, you know, it's a really competitive role, I'll be like, then give it to them. Like, you know, like it's just, you have to have a sense of self-worth in the entertainment industry, because every single turn you make will constantly try and tell you that you're not your worth, you know.
Yeah, I love that sense of self. And that leads into the next question I wanted to ask you was, you know, you're a female powerhouse, and how did you overcome like bad press or really harsh judgments and you know, doors constantly shut, maybe because of your color or your race or anything like that? What was there like a little voice in your head that was like always telling you things like, come on, Kat, let's do this? Like, what was it?
Well, I don't know if you kind of remember, but right around the time right before I had left Georgia, I was doing all of the shows in the WeHo and the gay club run. So outside of you and my best friend Frankie, I was running around with Raja and all of these different drag queens, and those were the only clubs, that was the only community that embraced me. So when I first kind of started blowing up, and I started to get really harsh comments, mostly about my fashion, which honestly, looking back, I completely understand that they're completely valid concerns and comments online. Like, I get it. But, you know, when 2009, 2010, I was basically raised by drag queens. So there was a part of me, that little voice was not so little. It was like, you better tell them, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? There was that kind of like teeth sharp responses.
Amazing.
Like, and they came from that energy that I had been around at that point for years, where I'm surrounded by these fierce performers who were also, you know, very eclectic and flamboyant dressers with flamboyant personalities. So I didn't necessarily respond to it in the most politically correct way. I responded it like any gay man would. Like, or any, you know, person who had been discriminated for so long had a really funny, sassy response. So that kind of was how I responded to things in the beginning. A lot of it was through humor. I would read something online about what I would be wearing, but then I'd look at my friends and they looked crazier than me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I look great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it didn't really get me too distraught, because everyone I was with were much wilder than me. The things that really made me have to shift the most aggressively was when I started encountering this aggressive racism. You know, that happened pretty much throughout the entire time, the 8 years I was on this show. And I was encountering this intense racism, and not just racism, but anti-Semitism. You know, I'm Jewish, and my mom's Jewish, and I was raised by her and my grandma, who's Jewish and was in the Holocaust, and my family on her side is Israeli. So, I would encounter fierce racism and anti-Semitism. And that was the moment where I had two directions. At that point I could go. I could kind of retreat into my shell where I would not be judged about, my friends who were gay, trans, Black, had what people would consider disabilities. I call them probilities, and I was surrounded by all of these different people, or my race or my hair, or I could kind of retreat, right? Like that was an option absolutely on the table. Or I could go the other direction, which means get louder, be fiercer, wear even wilder clothes, get even deeper and fiercer into fashion, be a louder Black woman, be a louder Jewish woman, be everything that makes me different, and set it on fire and make it huge. And so, which direction I ended up going in. So that actually winded up, at first there was a lot of backlash, but then the more honest I was and vulnerable I was about my journey, about my history, about my friends, and went into activism more aggressively for LGBTQ, for trans, for Black Lives Matter, anti-Semitism, things like that. Then I think people started to understand me more, and that it's okay to be weird and it's okay to be different. And I just fiercely went for it. I became protective, not just of me, but everyone like me that is different. So that was the big shift for me. You can talk about my fashion all day. At that moment, I wore exactly what I wanted to wear. If I wanted to wear a dime piece and have my hair in a crazy thing and wear some combat boots, you couldn't tell me nothing. And I didn't care, because what other people think of me is actually none of my business. So it was the racism, the cultural, and being antagonized. That was what made me start to feel like I had to make a shift in how I moved and what I did.
Wow. I never knew that. I never knew you had to experience all that. So that's beautiful. I'm glad you didn't hide under a rock. It's like you set your life on fire, and it seems like you haven't stopped since. And it's almost like, is this person real? It's like, I just can't believe that you just had this idea 10 years ago, and you just kept on going, and
thank you.
And I'm so proud of you, Kat. Oh. It's amazing. It's really, I've always been in awe of you. So thank you.
Oh, I love that.
Thanks, Laura. You've been my friend for, my true friend, Because anyone now could be my friend. They'd be like, no, I have maybe, I would say 10 good friends, and, I consider you one of them. I think that, you know me better than anyone might ever now know me. So you saw the struggle and the hustle, babe. And the scrappiness that, I do a pretty good job, I think, of hiding how scrappy I really am, but maybe not.
I'm like, scrappy? You're so, you exude a lot of grace. So I'm like, scrappy,
thank
but yeah.
God. Thank God I exude grace, because I am still that scrappy girl that's borrowing your clothes and your hats from your closet and, could never afford a stylist. Like, I'm still that person, but I'm glad that I exude so much grace.
That's so sweet.
But I guess, you could see it. You could see that, transition and morph with your new projects and, with your music and everything. So yeah, like during the past 2 years, like definitely, what have you explored more deeply, beside, also, just being more viciously yourself. Mm-hmm. And I saw an interview about, your new alter ego, but it's not. I actually saw in the interview that Kat Graham might have been your alter ego. And we'd love to know more about Toro Gato. So tell us about that.
Sure. Toro Gato, like I mentioned, is a project that I had started about 5 years ago with Darren. He directed all of the visuals, and we wanted to create something that felt like, that was a visual album, but an artist almost like an entity that was super, super visual. And I personally, whenever you come to Atlanta and you see my home, it's very eclectic. And my personal style is very eclectic. Like I love the visuals of like Tarsem and Jodorowsky and Guillermo del Toro, and I love the celebration of the monster. And I love looking at projects where, you know, you get to really not just explore, but honor the shadow self, which is the part of you that when you're after this interview and you take off your makeup and you look in the mirror, like that's who I'm going after within, you know, each of us. So I wanted to do something that explored my childhood, my difficulty in my relationships, and all the things that I had been hiding because I wanted to be this super graceful, always powerful, perfect artist publicly. That because I never necessarily wanted people to see how much I struggled or how poor I was or my issues with my parents or relationships or abuse. Like that's not something that should I ever plan to highlight. I'm like, I'm just going to go through this moment and then I'm going to be fabulous and no one's going to know how I really started or all the really difficult extra jobs or odd end jobs I had to do and was still broke. You know, I never wanted to necessarily show that. But with this project, I found that being honest and in the same way that I use my history and my heartbreaks and my losses and even my happy moments in my acting, I wanted to bring that into my music. So that's what that project is. And we're dropping the full collection, which includes merchandise and vinyls,
So cool.
cassettes, like everything. It's huge. It's huge. We're dropping that January 21st. But I think over the past 2 years, in addition to that, I really got into wellness. I started a wellness company. I realized I thought, you know, especially after 2017, when I had wrapped this show, which I had no time to do anything else during those 8 years, I was like, oh my God, now I can do all the movies and I can do all the music. And I got even more aggressive than I had ever been. And I had set myself up where 2020 was going to be the biggest year. I had 4 or 5 movies out. I had an animated series. I had an album drop. I was like really prepared and I had multiple promo tours planned. And I was like, this is the moment that I've been waiting for since I started my career, like it's finally coming. And then everything came to a screeching halt and everything got canceled. And I had to look at my life and who I was as a person and say, am I doing enough? Like, am I really that person that's about making this world better? Because how it looks right now is it's pretty self-possessed. So how do I build something or help create something where people can actually benefit from my existence? And that's when Modern Nirvana became a company. It had started off where it was just me and Frankie, who you know, Laura. I had him do my podcast with Deepak, which is really also a docu-series about consciousness and exploring consciousness. And Frankie did one of the episodes. I needed some B-roll. We got together. We did a little. He put with Bryant Wood. He put together a little convention with all of these different products, biohacking products, speakers. Shaman Durek came and did a meditation and this really cool dance. And it was really cool. We realized how successful that was. And we were going to do another one, but 2020 hit, we did it in a meditation. I'm like, this is a company. This is not just a conference. So then we formed a company and we've been doing, a lot of great work through this wellness company and helping a lot of great people. So, that was really what I think I learned a lot about is exploring wellness on a deeper, more honest level over the past 2 years.
So cool. Yeah. And I saw the red lights as well that you guys are selling, and that's so amazing. LED.
Yeah, we've been working with a lot of great companies that I'll start to kind of unveil over the course of time. But we we really find products that we personally use, you know, everything from like, I mean, we had them at this year's conference, which we honored Deepak, and had this guy, Dave Asprey, who's like the king of biohacking. He was our keynote speaker. So we had a bunch of products there, from Brain Tap to Radical Roots, and all of these incredible products that I didn't even know about, that I'm exploring. The new thing that we're talking about and we're getting into is Leela, which is this quantum company that puts things into a quantum field. We're getting deep into some of these products that are helping people. And, you know, we just want to be healers and explorers of wellness. And, you know, I think it's an important part of the responsibility of having a platform. Is like, well, what are you doing to bring attention to things, people, products that can actually help heal the world, especially right now with this pandemic, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad that you get to do that with your best friend as well.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. We get a lot done.
Very cool.
So as far as wellness, as far as like, you know, there's so many different realms to that, you know, whether it be sexual wellness, meditation, breath work, what has worked for you these past few weeks or months or anything? What has really transformed your life?
I hate saying this because I'm a triple Virgo, and
I'm a Virgo too.
I know, and it's been hard. The thing that has helped me the most is letting go. Like, you do the work and you let go. I've always been a control freak, and I think that comes from like having a difficult childhood and struggling through most of my career and being like, I have to control everything or else my life is going to fall apart and I'll be back to where I started. There's always that kind of subconscious fear that that's going to happen. But I would say letting go of my planner sometimes, turning off my phone and being present, and just focusing on being in harmony with the universe, with God. That has been the best and coolest part of the past 2 years, is that, you know, I'll do the work and whatever's meant to be will be. And truly believing that, not just like, oh yeah, well, it's meant to be, you know, but even through all of my losses, and, you know, over the past few years, which have been pretty significant, understanding the importance of being in a union with God, you know, and letting go. You are not God. I mean, you are in some level, yeah. Right? You have that. We're all a part of the same consciousness, but there is a higher consciousness that has divine purpose for you. And if you stay in that place of love and gratitude, you will end up exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything you're saying is resonating with us for sure.
Okay.
I think that letting go has been this week's topic as well. Being a Virgo, yeah, it's just like I don't know, holding resentment or holding something that didn't work out, or, you know, why didn't this work, or this person like didn't do this for me, or something like that. You know, I think maybe Virgos, we struggle with that, but yeah, that's been on my mind too. Letting go. It's so powerful, right? Just let it go. Just let it go.
What is meant for you will not go past you. And sometimes, especially with social media, we look at what other people have and what other people are doing, and we're like, well, why couldn't I get that? Like, I'm more talented. I'm more this. I have more vision. I have more this. And but through that process, we start to diminish our own worth. And if we just looked at it like with gratitude and said, like, thank you, God, because you obviously knew that I wanted that and it didn't happen. So it must be for some really divine reason. And And thank you for removing it from my life and coming at things from like this place of absolute gratitude. You know, I think I'm a pretty humble person, but I also have a massive ego. So I see girls that don't have half the resume I do doing bigger things, or what I would consider huge things. And I get in my head, and, you know, I have to constantly remind myself to stay in a place of gratitude, because if I was doing that one job, I wouldn't have done this other job, or I wouldn't be able to go on this refugee mission, or, you know, is that even in my higher purpose? Is that even in the map towards my higher purpose? Or is that just a pure ego request that I just want to have that so I can be on that cover or be on that screen with that actor? Like, is it coming from the place of what I have in conversation with God defined as my absolute purpose on this earth? So these are questions I have to deal with daily.
Yeah, because it's like no one's
Love
perfect, right? Even though you're very clear-headed and understanding of what you want out of life, there are going to be moments that the other part of Kat is going to come in and start talking like your ego. And so is there something that really,
self.
Yeah. Is there something that you do that really helps you kind of just snap back into, you know, your trust and your confidence?
I think being of service. Like if I start to really get in my head and be like, I should be a bigger star, and why am I not nominated? And I start to get into some nonsense that has nothing to do with being of service, I find a way to be of service. So you see how much I might have done in my humanitarian work. A lot of that has come from the absolute need to be of service, because I am going down a rabbit hole of self-sabotaging, and the only way to keep my perspective is to gain perspective. So, you know, in a lot of ways, my humanitarian work is some of the most selfish work that I've ever done.
Wow. Yeah, it's such an interesting way to put it. Yeah, and it definitely gives you that time to reflect and just that humility, right? That there's so much happening in the rest of the world that it's like
there's so much happening. Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
with you know, this virus and people losing their homes and people fleeing for their lives and all this discrimination and, you know, all the racism and all of these things that people are going through, you know, to really think that while you have a roof over your head or clean water to drink or clothes on your back, that your problems are worse than people that are really having to face these hardships where they can't pay their rent, or even like the loss of love or not having love, or the loneliness that people are alone and will never have love. I mean, there's so many things that we have to be grateful for. And it's important that we have perspective, because a lot of us just get in our heads and we think that, you know, things are so terrible, and they're not.
Yeah.
The reality is, yeah. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, that's such great advice, to just do acts of service and just give you that different perspective. You just got to change
immediately.
Things up. Yeah.
Yes, immediately.
And so to go back on, you know, we were talking about like racism when you were in Vampire Diaries, and I remember seeing like the interview that you did with Vogue about just how you felt like within that show you weren't able to really wear like your natural hair, like you always had to like have the wigs. Are you seeing like the industry change from within in terms of, you know, just featuring more dynamic people with more natural hair, just all the different like things that racism in Hollywood has always experienced?
I think a lot of racism that I've experienced, I mean, not publicly, but I think throughout the industry and jobs that I would do, where they would be like, you're not featuring your afro. Okay. You're not wearing braids. No, this is what you're doing. I think a lot of that has been very subtle, and I didn't catch a lot of it while I was on the show. And there were a lot of great people that worked at Warner Brothers, and actually the CW executives that were flagging things and bringing it to certain people's attention and really trying to make that difference. And there are executives Like this woman, Odetta, is amazing at Warner Brothers. I mean, she really helped me navigate both, you know, within the system and publicly, how to deal with the subtle and the not so subtle racism I was experiencing, and how to have grace and be eloquent in how I addressed it. So when I talk about what I experienced over 8 years, I like to mention them because there were people in my corner fighting for me every day. Tracy Blackwell, I mean, they saw potential issues that were happening, you know, issues that had happened in the past, and they were doing everything within this very sometimes subtle and not so subtle system to do that. Am I seeing a difference? Absolutely. I mean, I see, and I think that's why I'm like such a like Netflix cheerleader, is because they were the first studio after I had wrapped Vampire Diaries to put me as a lead actress in a film. And they're still doing that. And for me as a Black woman, as a Black biracial Jewish woman, like that was not necessarily where I had hoped and dreamed that would happen. Now it's very common. I mean, now I watch every, you know, different shows, and it's pretty common that you can have a Black female lead. There are still struggles, and I look at magazines and I still see certain types of women being celebrated and other women not, even down to body type, you know. And I think that there's obviously always going to be work to be done, but compared to what was happening in 2009, where, you know, most of the Black women that were celebrated were, you know, 50 plus, and there were not many young Black women being the leads, but there were so many white women being leads, you know, absolutely I see a difference. And I see much more opportunity now, even for myself, than I did when, you know, I started.
Awesome. That's great. That's good to hear. Yeah, you know, it's sometimes we need that kind of inside perspective, because we're shown one thing from the media, we're shown one thing, but it's like good to hear from someone within the industry that change is happening, and that, you know, there are more opportunities and things like that. Awesome.
Really great. So switching gears, I want to know more about the Toro Gato project, but also your romantic partner you've had in your life. And it seems like
Laura,
such a positive.
I'm talking about my personal life on here. He's been my creative partner and my muse, and, you know, the love of my life.
That's beautiful.
He's incredible, and, you know, he's also challenged me to recognize my worth in really serious and critical moments where I just could not see my own worth for the life of me. And he's really celebrated every part of me that's different and unique, and has been, you know, such a steady force of creative support and partnership in a way that I'd never had before. So I'm truly grateful that I have him in my life, for sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's so special.
Celebrating love. Love is real. And how important do you think it is to have like a vision with your life partner, like Darren? Like, how important is that?
It depends on the person. I know a lot of couples where they just cannot work together, and they, you know, that's just not. Darren and I are a creative match made in heaven. We agree on everything creatively, and we're such a good team. Like, I can write a script, and, you know, he could put the visuals and direct it, and, you know, we produce together, and, you know, it works. It just works. But there are certain couples where that's not a good idea. Don't do it. Don't mix business with pleasure. It just really depends on the person and the personality types.
Yeah.
You know, I personally, like, at this point of my life, have so much going on. I need my partner to be my real partner in everything that I do. Whether it's my fashion, my humanitarian work, my scripted shows or films, you know, I need that because I just need a lot of support. I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot of goals. and I can't just have somebody who's like, hey, call me when you're done. Like, no, like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You'll never see me. You'd never see me. And I need a creative force who's going to inspire me. I mean, I've had the best, I love both of my exes. They're great guys, but there's a sense of, I mean, Darren's introduced me to art in a way that I've never known. He'll introduce me to directors or different films, art in museums, artists, and he'll just like sit with me and introduce me to different artists that I might not know about constantly, and really bring my attention to so many different world topics, and overall artistry that I never would have had otherwise.
Shout out Darren.
Yeah, that sounds like
shout out Darren. Yeah, he's a brilliant man.
Yeah, that's just gonna
mirror you.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it seems like you're at such a, you're solid with yourself. You're at peace with yourself. So you're gonna obviously reflect and mirror that and attract that love of your life to be that other person for you.
Yeah, and I'm I hope that, I have a successful marriage in my life and we're together forever. I'm also the kind of person that, if for whatever reason I am alone at some point, I'm fine with that. I am my favorite person to hang out with in a relationship or not. So I will be okay.
Virgo.
I'm a total Virgo. Like, totally.
What's Darren's sign, by the way?
He's a Taurus. He's Toro. He's the Toro in Toro Gato. That's how it started.
Got it.
And then it went into a deeper conversation about, both of our sides, our shadow self and our not shadow self. But originally it was the Toro and the Gato, cat, and the bull. So it's like all the things within a relationship where you have to face. A lot of people don't stay in relationships and they just go back on the app and swipe right because they find something that they don't like, or that person triggers something within them that they don't like. And instead of looking at that and asking why within that moment, am I being triggered or am I getting reactive? People just move on. And then that same pattern occurs in every single relationship. And Darren and I have taught each other to really like stay like in the uncomfortable moments and in the difficult moments. And I think I've elevated because of this relationship and in a great way. And I'm very happy, I'm in love and, my life is full.
Nice.
Happy for you,
yeah,
babe.
this sounds great.
Excited for all the new, art and just creativity you guys are going to put out into the world the next few years. It's amazing.
And the people that you're going to inspire too, the people that you're inspiring every day with being yourself and your words, and lots of inspiration and lots of things going on for you.
So cool. And tell us, okay, what would be Kat's legacy? With your time on Earth, what's your legacy you want to leave behind?
I just want to be someone who helped people who didn't have a voice. So, as ambassador for the refugee agency or as an actor, the purpose is the same. It's to be a voice. And that through me, people have a better life and a deeper, more profound understanding of our connectivity. So that would be what I would hope to leave behind, is that the world is more connected, more tolerant, more loving, more accepting, more peaceful. That I can only hope would be what I would leave behind. And maybe a little bit of fashion.
Yes.
Perfect.
There's no other Kat Graham, that's for sure. And for young women or even young guys that are just in the industry in Hollywood, like what are some like just tips or just some like really key nuggets of advice that you can just, share out there in the airwaves with the podcast family?
With men in particular, or just people in particular?
or anyone just trying to just like get into Hollywood, get into the industry, and like, or even just, you know, get in there? Like, any tips?
As somebody that started from the bottom, and felt that I needed certain things to validate me, work on your craft. Don't worry about going to every party. Don't worry about who you know. Work on your craft. Be the best artist or executive that you can be, and everything else will fall into place. I truly believe that. Just change the way, stop looking outside of yourself for your success. It will come when you decide you're ready for it.
Damn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because normally it's like, all right, you're going to network and you're going to do this and you're going to do, it's like,
No.
like, just work on your craft, work on the power in, you know, your artisan skills and using your hands and true personality of yourself. I love that. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you so much.
I love you so much, Laura.
I love you too, babe. We're so thankful you're here today. And yeah, we just want to, you know, just as we wrap up the podcast, we just want to say thank you for your time and energy and contribution to culture, and, you know, paving the way for so many young women of color in Hollywood. Just wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and being a visionary, really, because you have so much more to give. Like you said, you haven't even just touched what you want to be by the end. So we're excited to see where your journey takes you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me on the Conscious Kitchen podcast.
Yeah,
where we
cook. You know, we cook a.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Liz.
Exactly. I was gonna say, where we cook up conscious conversation.
Yeah,
I think we did.
You know, yeah. And be sure to check out Kat's latest projects on katgram.com. Stalk her Instagram at katgram. And you could also buy her Galactica merch at katgramshop.com. And also be sure to follow her stream and her new single, Swim, on Spotify through Toro Gato, the name. And we'll be adding all the links at the bottom of this episode. So if you resonated with this podcast, go ahead and share this with a friend right this moment. You know, if you love Kat, make sure you follow her and stalk her, because can't wait to see the next biggest projects that you're going to release. And you'll also see our Netflix. So it's awesome. Thank you so much, babe. And thank you guys so much for listening to the Conscious Kitchen podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Kat.
Bye, guys.
Much love. Bye, guys.